rowing in the right direction. What is the importance of OKRs for product sales and marketing alignment? As a product marketer, because we wear multiple hats, it's important to know which hats add the most value. That is, which roles, which metrics and OKRs can help us make sure that we are focusing on the right priorities, the right roles and responsibilities. And some of these initiatives are more focused on soft skills and may not be directly measured, but the reality is proper alignment on KPIs or OKRs are critical for success in defining product marketing success. And it's important to make sure we have that good synergy across product marketing and sales. That's the sync that we need to make sure our goals and objectives are aligned with the sales team and that we are prioritizing on the right initiatives, because we will never have enough resources to do everything. And that's why it's important to make sure your OKRs are aligned with the leadership team. Having that lockstep is important to make sure your go-to-market is critical. And this also makes sure that our resources are focused on the right initiatives and that we are all rowing in the same direction. The way I looked at my OKRs were tied to our core values of inspire, influence, and impact. And we tied it to 3 disciplines of success. Inspire was tied to employee, influence was tied to business, and impact was tied to customer. This way, we were taking care of all the 3 tenets that was important to make sure that as a business, we were doing the right thing. What do you think holds the future for product marketing? Now, product marketing is becoming more and more important in organizations that don't have this opportunity today. You'll see that product marketing is the first hire when you go into organizations in marketing. And you may hear companies request for go-to-market, competitive intelligence, buyer persona, messaging and positioning, and all of these things are great. But the reality is that's the underlying recipe for successful product marketing. Mastering the art and science of product marketing is how I like to think of it. Now, who would a rockstar product marketing be? Or what would a product marketing rockstar team look like? I would like to think that this is someone who is empathetic to customers, empathetic to our stakeholders, and to our team. We are the voice of the market, and we need to bring forward use cases and business requirements just to make sure that we are aligned along all the ways. Our focus is to drive customer advocacy and success stories. That's why I like to think of the buyer journey, all the way from discover to advocacy. So our rockstar product marketing team is a mix of folks who are great storytellers, who can bring different narratives together and tell the story that will make us feel and move from a state of complacency to a status quo to making change happen. This is the beauty of product marketing, and this is why the future of product marketing is very exciting. You have seen with Product Marketing Alliance how many product marketers around the world have come together. This is what excites me when I think about mentoring product marketing leaders of the future, because we all have our story to tell and we are all here making that change. So I believe that product marketing has been undergoing an evolution. And when you think about the product marketing role itself, it's more than just messaging and positioning. We are working with different stakeholders and teams in marketing to bring the entire customer journey, all the way from awareness to consideration to decision. And it doesn't end there. It goes all the way to advocacy. That's why whether you're working with marketing teams, whether it's demand generation, whether it's your customer marketing team, whether it's your content marketing team, you're making sure you have that tight alignment so that we are all working towards the same goals. When you think about product, I like to think of myself as a product marketer that is tied very closely with my product manager. And this is intentional, right? When we talked about those portfolio roadmap prioritization, if we are not in lockstep with our product manager, we might be working on different priorities and may not be making the best use of our time and resources that we have. When you think about sales, my best success has come when the sales leaders are with you all the step going forward. They're here to make sure that you are successful and make sure that we are helping them be successful. Now, that's where product, marketing, and sales come together to make this amazing experience together. And this is why product marketing is that central linchpin, as I think of it, because we have the opportunity to work cross collaboration, work across different departments and teams, and make sure that we are bringing forward the best ideas and the best projects forward. Now, there are enough tools that product marketing has come to look at. But if you think of the future of what holds product marketing forward, it's making sure that we have that cross-functional alignment, that we are thinking about teams together, and we are thinking about opportunities together. I invite each of you to think of what is that one skill, one signature recipe of yours that you like to think of as your strongest suit in your tool belt. This is a great opportunity for all of us going forward, and I encourage each of you to take this step forward to start thinking about stakeholder alignment. I wish you all the very best, and thank you so much for listening today. Have a wonderful day.
Hello, everybody, and thank you so much for your patience with those slight technical difficulties, but hopefully you can see and hear us clearly now. And thankfully, I am joined by the fantastic Eric Mansour, who, as you well know by now, is the VP of Product Marketing at Crayon for this next session, all around the state of competitive intelligence. So, provided you can hear and see us all clearly as well, Eric, we are good to go.
Can you hear me? Is there any feedback? Is anybody infiltrating our conversation? You got me? Okay.
Nice and clear on my side.
I am so glad. Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate this.
Not at all. Just before I hand over, I want to remind everyone this is a fully live session. So any Q&A, questions, bits and pieces, pop them in the chat throughout, and I'll hop back on after the session and we can run through them. So everything you ever wanted to know about competitive intelligence, get it in the chat and we'll ask Eric. So welcome, Eric, and over to you.
And please use those reactions as well, the thumbs ups and the little clap things. That is a good sort of a makeshift poll mechanism. So please use those. But as Rose mentioned, my name is Eric Mansour, and I'm excited to speak with all of you about some major takeaways from our State of Competitive Intelligence survey, which is actually the 5th year that we've polled product marketers just like yourselves. If you've been with us throughout the day, you've probably seen the little videos that I've recorded for PMA Misunderstood, and you've probably heard about the company that I work for and a little bit about myself. But if you're viewing this on demand, if you're not watching it live, you may not have that context. So at the risk of really boring our live viewers, I apologize for the 130 of you who are watching right now. I just want to bring our time shifters up to speed with a little bit of an introduction. My name is Eric Manser, and for close to a decade, no matter where I have worked, my role has included some form of product marketing. But if you ask me what I did for a living, I'd tell you that I'm a born storyteller, and it's the thing that I love most about my job. My first set of stories was about music. I went to college wanting to be an MTV VJ, and you can see how well that turned out. So I spent 10 years chasing that dream to working at various top 40 radio stations. From there, I told stories about technology, and I spent a lot of time at SaaS companies and in enterprise marketing organizations doing precisely that. Speaking with customers, understanding their unique challenges, and working to make sure that those challenges themselves were solved by our product management team, or at least being openly addressed by our sales, customer success, and our marketing teams. The company I work for is called Crayon, and we're the industry leader in market and competitive intelligence software. We work with some of the biggest enterprise and mid-market companies, and many of you who are attending, 138 strong right now, may actually be Crayon users. So hello, thank you, and welcome. You guys use our tool set to activate competitive intelligence throughout your organizations by either or including empowering your sales and customer success teams, improving win rates, client retention, by helping your marketing team better understand how your rival solutions are presenting themselves in the market, ensuring that your executive teams are well equipped to make bold strategic decisions that help, that are based on what the competitors are up to, and delivering valuable competitive insights to your product management team, helping shape that development roadmap. As you can tell, and I built this slide purposefully, Crayon's approach to this important discipline is cross-functional and department agnostic. After all, it is not just your sales team that shows up to work every day with a passion for victory and a willingness to compete like they mean it. We believe that competitive intelligence can be a backbone for which high-growth companies can build a sustainable business advantage, regardless of the area of the organization that you call home. And as you're going to see throughout the remainder of our time together today, we are not the only ones that feel that way. The respondents to our 2022 State of CI survey overwhelmingly agree, and since most of them are product marketers, I have a tendency to trust their judgment. But even if you've never heard of Crayon before, I think you all know that the competitive intelligence job function and the industry that surrounds it is in a bit of a growth phase. More people are taking notice of what it is that product marketers are doing in this field and its importance to companies, no matter how large they might be. For example, over the past year, the venture capital and investment communities have made some pretty big bets on CI software providers, Crayon included. The number of open job opportunities for product marketers that make even a casual mention of competitive intelligence has skyrocketed, close to 11,000 last time I searched. And even the staid and stately market research firms like Gartner and Forrester are covering the competitive intelligence industry with greater focus than they ever had before. In fact, Forrester even quoted our 2021 State of CI survey in their most recent report on our industry. And they make money by allowing their customers to quote them and their reports. It just goes to show you how big this industry has gotten and how important the State of Competitive Intelligence survey can be when the tables turn and Forrester is the one quoting you. Well, let's get into the 2022 State of Competitive Intelligence survey. And as I mentioned earlier, as the industry leader in competitive intelligence software, we have a mandate to compile and distribute the definitive State of CI report on an annual basis. This incredible, and I mean incredible piece of content is brand new for 2022, and is the 5th year we've both conducted the survey and helped add nuance and context to those results. Months worth of research, and I mean months worth of research went into producing this document, and close to 1,200 competitive intelligence professionals, product marketers just like yourselves, from around the planet answered a series of multiple choice questions about their own competitive intelligence efforts. With the power and the scope of the report and the size and the growth of the industry fresh in our minds, let me talk through some of the high-level results of the 2022 State of Competitive Intelligence Survey. And I've collated the results into three key themes: people, process, and proof. Let's start with people, who are usually your first line of defense when you're trying to protect an advantage or make an attempt at gaining one. The first key finding, and this is not going to come as a shock to anybody, but competition is intensifying. Now, that seems like a statement of fact that literally anybody could make, but we've got some results to back it up, which are made all the more clear with the benefit of having looked at this answer for 3 years running. In the 2022 survey, we found that 59% of competitive intelligence practitioners say their markets have gotten much more competitive in recent years. That in and of itself is an increase of 18% between now and when we asked this question in 2021. What does that mean, right? Like, how did we get to this place, to this point? Well, it seems like every day one company or another is spinning up a brand new team to get into an adjacent market, or a new company is being created out of whole cloth to disrupt an industry. And in 2022, it's easier than ever before to identify a problem with an inefficient set of solutions and start a company around trying to solve it. Hit that little thumbs up button or even the clap button in your LinkedIn chat to see if you have had this problem over the past year, if you have seen a new company into your market or one of your existing companies sort of get into your market in some form or fashion. It makes a lot of sense. Given the remote nature of work, companies can hire anywhere at any time in any location. And as a result of all of this rapid and, quite frankly, volatile market movement, we believe that product marketers who feel that their companies are facing much more competitive pressure than they had before is a trend that's worth talking about. But it's not just the existence of competition. It's about what key decision makers are doing about it that makes us believe this is more than just an alarm being sounded, more than the sky is falling from a group of product marketers like us and yourselves. Compared to 2 years ago, stakeholders are 23% more likely to say that competitive intel is, quote, absolutely critical to their success. All that is to say that in 2022, the vast majority of recipients of competitive intelligence data now view it as either important or paramount to their job function. That, quite frankly, is huge. But it's not just about what other people in your organization are saying about the competition. It's about the money that is being spent to fight back. And this is where the thematic of header of people comes into play. Since 2018, we have seen a 50% increase in the number of competitive intelligence teams with 3 or more dedicated practitioners. Now, I think we've all heard the phrase, put your money where your mouth is, but I think the more apt idiom here is to follow the money. Because when the people that hold the purse strings are up against the wall, their natural inclination is to almost always invest in ways that are going to help solve their problems. And let's be honest, product marketers, high quality competitive intelligence doesn't just, fall from the sky. You need highly trained team members who can source it, who can add context to it, and help have their colleagues activate, right? So as the markets are getting bigger, the margins are getting smaller, the investment in competitive intelligence programs, and then specifically the people who can help companies make the most of it in the most impactful ways is only getting bigger. But when I talk about people, I wasn't simply referring to the actual boots on the ground competitive intelligence experts or practitioners or mavens like yourselves. I'm also talking about those people who are in your organization who are actively or passively participating in the process of competing. That is to say that, well, look, you can get a ton of intel by keeping your ear to the ground and mining the internet for publicly available information. You get a lot more value out of listening to your colleagues, like those in these departments, who are out there cultivating intel on your behalf from actual, fully alive human people. That, my friends, is called field intelligence. And in this year's survey, we heard from 64% of CI practitioners who described it as, quote, extremely valuable. By the way, extremely valuable is the green section on this slide, and you'll notice it's the response that has garnered the most extremely valuable answers, which makes a lot of sense, right? Those CI programs that have been fully integrated into the fabric of their organizations have made the act of competing part of their company's DNA. So it stands to reason that the people that provide valuable intel about your rivals that they've gathered from current or from future customers are fully bought in to the idea that a stream of competitive intelligence data is something that's worth themselves feeding into. In effect, these 64% of CI practitioners have effectively leveraged the people within their company who often work outside of their department to help make the act of finding nuggets of important information that much easier. So by now, you've figured out that people are a major component of this new wave of competitive intelligence programs, but it's not the only component, and that is for sure. Which brings us to our next section. See, investing in and engaging with good people is wasted time if you don't give them the right tools. And that brings us to the next of our set of 3 key themes that we see in the results of the 2022 State of CI survey. We call this process. The companies that are adding headcount to address their gaps in competitive intelligence are also growing their tech stacks. We heard from product marketers just like yourselves that the teams that are creating open recs to either own or help out with competitive intelligence initiatives are 144% more likely to expect increased use of CI tech in 2022. I want to say that again for people in the back. I'm not going to say it any louder. I'm going to wake the baby. 144%. Look, if you work in the competitive intelligence software industry like I do, that's a great number to hear. My head of sales and probably the top brass at our competitors are going to be stoked to read that in this year's State of CI survey. But to me, I'm not a sales guy, that result is actually indicative of the problems that simply can't be solved by throwing bodies at them, right? The various subgenres that exist within, well, many of our industries, but really specifically software as a service, the umbrella, they're unified by a common problem for which every solution, regardless of market, can claim to do in one way or another. We make investment in time, money, or both more efficient. So first, let's talk about the money. The solutions that companies are using to assist them in their competitive intelligence efforts come at a cost, whether it's an all-in-one software suite or a collection of systems that they've been able to stitch together. And the cost or costs are shouldered within marketing or product marketing organizations because that's generally where competitive intelligence as a job function lives. Since 2018, we've seen a 76% increase in the number of competitive intelligence teams with budgets that are greater than $25,000. Pretty big. Now that's money. Let's talk about time and relate those two things together. How are teams who are making their CI processes more efficient, and what can that tell us about where this additional money is being spent? The answer, as you're going to come to find out, is obviously technology. And when it comes to competitive intelligence, research and analysis have traditionally been the things that have been the most time-consuming, while activating what was learned in that research phase actually delivered more measurable return on investment. So the trend that we're seeing is not to avoid doing that important part at the beginning, but to source solutions that can make it easier and more streamlined. And compared to 4 years ago, practitioners are spending 14% less time on research and 15% more time on activation. And we believe that is due to the efficiency that's provided by automating the capturing, cataloging, and curating of competitive data through any number of different integrated or disparate software solutions. So if your people are now spending less time analyzing and more time activating as parts of their process, where and how are competitive intelligence teams allocating those hours in their day? Well, as we mentioned in the first thematic section, competition is intensifying for companies no matter how big they might be. And all of those different defensive positions are going to mean more varied competitive intelligence deliverables depending on the context. As you can see by the wide variety of responses, the answer to this question was multi-select or check all that apply. But the people in the revenue part of your organization, specifically those that are tasked with either finding new clients or retaining existing ones, those are the people that are dealing with the competition on a regular basis, mostly in the form of sales opportunities that are of a competitive nature. So to create a process that equips them with sustainable, easy to use competitive intelligence deliverables like battle cards seems like Well, a no-brainer. And 2/3 of competitive intelligence teams are doing just that. But remember, this is a multi-select question, so they're using battle cards to equip their sales teams, 2/3 of which of those teams are doing so. But there's so many other potential deliverables, profiles, sales slide decks, product sheets, competitive landscape reports that can equip so many other members of their organization. But we think it's really relevant because they're taking the fight to where the fight is actually happening. A second ago, I mentioned that the activation part of competitive intelligence does deliver more measurable ROI. And indeed, compared to those teams that activate on an ad hoc or once a day, twice a week basis, the teams that activate daily are twice as likely to report revenue impact. The measurement in this case can be separated into two different forms, subjective and objective. And we're going to cover more of the latter in our next section. But let's take a second to talk about the former. ROI can certainly be measured in percentages and numbers, values, plus minuses, the almighty dollars and cents. But ROI can also be measured by the anecdotal feedback from those people who are receiving the help that they need. More and more product marketers are finding ways and creating processes by which CI becomes part of their colleagues' daily and weekly workflows. And it's happening so much that even the least important stakeholder audience is considered at least somewhat important by 95% of competitive intelligence practitioners. Sales, executive leadership, marketing, product management, customer success. They're all important in one form or another to the in-house CI expert. That's another reason why so much investment is being made in competitive intelligence here in 2022. It's because the impact of those programs can be felt across the entire organization, not just by people who are in prospect or in client-facing roles. Well, let's take some time to talk about the other side of measurement, objective truth, in our third thematic section, which we call proof. As you've seen in any major sporting event and in the Olympics that literally just finished up, winning is something that's accomplished by measuring one number and its relationship to a host of others. More goals, more touchdowns, more runs, more overs, more tries, more games, fewer strokes in golf, a shorter amount of time. All of these winning numbers were compared to others that fell short of the mark in some way. So too can competitive intelligence be measured, and so too are teams willing to make sizable changes to their organizations to help them do exactly that. We know this because the 2022 State of Survey results seem to point to an enterprise-wide doubling down on people and processes that will help companies compete more effectively and win more across the board. This thematic section is all about how those same teams are putting numbers against those efforts to better understand the quality of those programs and what can be done to help make them perform better. Since 2018, we have seen an 88% increase in the number of competitive intelligence teams with defined KPIs. Now let's unpack that. When looking at these results, one could assume one of two situations may have unfolded. Either A, a competitive intelligence program was created over the past 4 years, or B, a respondent to the survey is part of a program that's been in place for a little bit of a while. Now, our first situation, the new program, was most likely founded based on the belief that, well, look, you can't stand up a brand new business function in the COVID-19 era without being to recognize the return on that investment almost from the get-go. And the other situation, the existing program, may have been allowed to operate sort of unencumbered by measurable success metrics, but have now fully embraced the idea of KPIs, given the importance of understanding the impact that CI could have on their business. The second idea is all but confirmed. We basically back into confirming that second notion with a finding that corroborates what we could safely assume, that programs that have yet to figure out a way to measure the effectiveness of their CI efforts are endeavoring to do so, and soon. In fact, amongst those teams who have not yet defined their competitive intelligence KPIs, 74% are in the process of doing so. So almost 3/4 of those that we surveyed are making key investments in CI, they're broadening their program to a larger group of stakeholders, and they're seeking to qualify those investments in people and in process in a measurable way. The investments in people, part of that last takeaway, is something that I think it's also worth talking about in the context of this proof portion of our discussion. That is to say, just by opening up and filling new roles in CI doesn't mean that it makes it any easier to measure the impact. In fact, compared to large CI teams, which we define as 3 or more practitioners, smaller CI teams, call it 2 or fewer people, are 35% more likely to say that they struggle with success measurement. Important note, but that said, large teams are just as likely as small teams to say that they struggle with intel collection. So it really doesn't matter if the team is comprised of greater than 3 people or less than 2. It's only 35% easier to understand what's working with more headcount, and equally as challenging for those teams to justify and actually do the work that's required to make the CI program run in the first place. And of course, it's worth making another mention of the fact that the best way to solve that intel collection problem is to make targeted investments in CI technology, which, as we talked about earlier, and as the survey results prove, that's happening more frequently than it ever has before. But back to measurement. We could spend a ton of time talking about how these organizations are understanding the impact of their CI programs, and my company is doing spending a lot of time in 2022 doing just that through our various content initiatives. But I mean, the closer that a CI program is going to get to a measurement metric that the entire organization can understand and wrap their brains around, namely one with a $ in front of it, the more meaningful that KPI is going to be. But it's going to take some time. The notion of marketing attribution is still a young concept in the grand scheme of things. Being able to track sales down to the first click or the last click is still something that eludes a lot of established marketing engines. So having the same level of attribution exist for something like competitive intelligence, that could be an uphill battle for a lot of companies. But as I've said before, and I'll say again, product marketers are often some of the smartest people in the room, regardless of the room. And it's only a matter of time before we, product marketers, crack the code. And perhaps we're going to find out more about this in our 2023 State of CI survey, which you all will be asked to provide feedback on towards the end of this year. So please, please be on the lookout for that. Let me wrap things up by saying this. What you've seen only scratches the surface of what was included in this year's State of Competitive Intelligence report. There's an astonishing number of insights in a document that our entire marketing team spends, an inordinate amount of time and effort on putting together. To be cited by a company like Forrester, to see tens of thousands of product marketers from all over the world download this each year is really a testament to what this survey means. And really what it can tell us about our industry as a whole. So I'm excited to announce that this entire document is available starting today, right now, at crayon.co/2022 State of CI. For so many more revealing insights, feedback from product marketers just like yourselves, and some of the key ways that our roles and responsibilities continue to evolve as those years tick by, I'd encourage you to go to our site and download it today. Once again, my name is Eric Manser. I am proud to be a product marketer and a peer to each and every one of you. Thank you so much for your time today, and thanks to the Product Marketing Alliance. Thank you, Rose, for giving me the chance to speak to you. Now, Rose, any questions about this or anything related to competitive intelligence? I'm stoked to answer.
Absolutely. Thank you as ever, Eric. Awesome session. We've got a couple of questions. So first off, you mentioned in the survey findings that more and more companies are trying to establish KPIs around competitive intelligence. But for a company that is starting to build a CI program, what are some of those KPIs that you would advise they consistently look at?
Good question. Give me 2 seconds, because so the slide that I had up on the screen earlier, I had it up briefly, is really sort of like taking your funnel wherever you sit within the marketing organization and throwing a competitive intelligence metric against it. So, the amount of newsletter opens that you get from the competitive intelligence newsletter, your competitive win rate or your retention rate. But what we're finding is this notion of influence revenue. So as the directly tying engagement with a competitive intelligence deliverable to the the actual revenue that you see come in, that I think is where a lot of the industry is moving towards, because it gets very, very close to the way growth marketers think about the influence of an ad over market share, right? So Coinbase very famously put that bouncing little QR code during the Super Bowl, and they saw a massive amount of site traffic. They can measure that as a result of that 1 minute long ad during the biggest American football game of the year. And I think in the same way, competitive intelligence teams are trying to say, hey, how can I draw a straight line between the work that I'm doing, the engagement my team is having with competitive intelligence, directly to the revenue that we're seeing as a result from that competitive opportunity. So I think that answers your question, that there are a wide variety of metrics that a team can use, but eventually you're going to want to get down to a number, like with a dollar sign in front of it, like I said, that's understood by everybody within that part of your organization.
Yeah, absolutely. And Carolina had a great question as well. So is your annual run rate or growth rate a factor in deciding the appropriate spend on paid CI tools, or is it driven by a market context alone? So in other words, how small is too small to start spending the cash on CI?
It's a good question. I think that there is a spectrum of competitive intelligence programs, and that is to say that it's almost always influenced by where you are in your market. So this is not a plug, I sleep on a Casper mattress in my bedroom, right? A Casper is a bed-in-a-box mattress company. That is a company that was born out of the notion of competing with the bigger brands of mattresses that you have to buy at the stores. So if you're a company that was born in the crucible of competition, you know that you are literally punching up against a market that is trying to keep you down, then investing in competitive intelligence is probably a good idea. And quite frankly, you've probably been doing it from the get-go. But if you find yourself in a market leadership position where there doesn't seem to be others within your landscape, it may be time to start thinking about it, because as we mentioned earlier, it's only a matter of time before someone's going to pop up out of nowhere, think that there's no other solution in the market that can do what it is that you're doing, and suddenly you've got a competitor waiting on your doorstep. So I don't think it's necessarily related to your annual run rate or related to revenue metrics. I think it's related a lot to where your market is and where you want to get to. Because as your company gets bigger, the more also rans and those nipping at your heels are going to rise up.
Yeah, absolutely. And then Moynak asked a question which got a lot of upvotes, and it's something I see a lot in the community. So how much effort should a solo product marketer put into CI within an early stage SaaS outfit? Obviously, we know product marketers are spread very thin, so I'd love to hear your take.
Yeah, I think that's a good question. I think it depends on what else is occupying your time as a product marketer, and if your competitors are ultimately existential threats to your company. So let's say, for the sake of argument, you're at one end of that CI spectrum. If you exist as a result of disruption, or you're trying to disrupt a market, keeping a cursory glance or a pretty decent ear or eye on what it is that the people you're trying to disrupt are doing is a pretty valid use of your time. So whether it be, a couple of hours a week, you're, using Google Alerts, or perhaps a tool like ours, or other tools in the space, just identifying what it is they've got going on, trying to identify if there are product trends or content trends that they're leaning into, just so you can stay ahead of what it is a very established player in the industry is doing. On the other side of things, if you are literally a new company in a new market that you have created on your own, it's probably more, a little bit less time, slightly less, again, just as a way to sort of keep an understanding and keep an eye on how big of a lead you might have. I think a brand new bootstrapped SaaS companies are either on either end of those spectrums, to answer that question specifically. So I do think a fraction of your time on one end and a little bit more of your time on the other end, and depending on where you fall within the spectrum, I think that time is going to vary. But I think a lot of it depends on the markets and where it's shifting, and where you sit within that market, and how it's shifting either towards or away from you.
Yeah, super interesting take. And I'm going to squeeze in one final question, but leave us with a bit more inspiration. Who are some of the companies that you think are doing CI really well? Like, is there anyone you can pick out as kind of a model example? Fortunately, I've been at Crayon since April. I've had 60, 80, 100 different conversations with
with companies. I love what Rapid7 is doing. I love what Dropbox is doing. I love what Miro is doing. I had a conversation with a gentleman from MasterCard, a big credit card company here in the United States and around the world the other day, and they're not using competitive intelligence for battle cards. They're doing it to create a wargaming exercise by which they build up this model of competitive intelligence so much that they basically can embody their competitors. They know who they are, they role play, and then they basically try to poke holes in their own defensive strategies, wearing the hats of their competitors. It's such a brilliant idea. The whole company gets involved with the wargaming, and it's a really interesting way of activating competitive intelligence that goes simply beyond sort of like training and bullet points and talking points and boots on the ground stuff. It's really kind of remarkable. So, I mean, those are some of the ideas that pop into my head, but I got a lot of ideas in my head. So that's
I think that's a great place to end on, that it's not just about gathering the competitive intelligence, but like you say, activating it. And that is really where the strategic value lies. Eric, as ever, awesome. Thank you so much. And we are tuning right back into another session, and you are hosting the rest of the day. So yeah, stay tuned, everybody, as we are going straight into another talk.
Good early morning to those of you joining us from the West Coast of the United States, where it's still pretty early for each of you, and welcome back to the PMA's Misunderstood Virtual Summit. I'm Eric Manser, your host for the day's events, and the VP of Product Marketing at Crayon, the industry leader in market and competitive intelligence software. My company, Crayon, is the title sponsor of this year's Misunderstood event, and we couldn't be more excited about it. Our customers regularly use our toolset to track and analyze vital data about their rivals and disseminate that data to teams all across their organization. Competitive intelligence helps everyone in a company, regardless of their job title, learn more about their rivals and their markets more than they ever knew before. Learning is crucial, and it's the best part about being a product marketer. I learn something new every single day. For example, I genuinely don't know what services marketing is, what it does, and how it relates to product marketing. But fortunately, we've got somebody waiting in the wings that's going to help us better understand this concept and what it means to them. With a presentation entitled Making the Jump, Marketing Services and How It's Different from Product, please welcome Rachel Raposa, Lead Product Marketing Manager for Services at UKG. Now sit back, enjoy, and wake up, San Francisco.
Hey everyone, thank you for joining. My name is Rachel Raposa, and I'm a lead product marketing manager at Ultimate Kronos Group, also known as UKG. And today I'm going to be talking about making the jump from marketing traditional products to marketing services. And it's a topic that isn't covered a whole lot, so I'm really excited to share my story and some of the things that I've learned along the way when I was making the shift. So for the agenda, I'm going to cover these three main points from a high level. First, what is services marketing? Second, how is it similar and different to product marketing? And then finally, what's the business case for services marketing? So I know I only have 10 to 15 minutes with you, so if you do want to learn more, you can reach out to me via LinkedIn, or you can catch me in real life at the Product Marketing Summit in New York. All right, to jump right in, let me do a quick intro on me. So here's some background on my career. I've spent about 12 years in marketing, with 7 of those years in various product marketing roles, or roles that were predominantly product marketing. And then last summer, I moved into a services marketing role within our product marketing team here at UKG. And this role was a new role for UKG, so I got to establish a whole brand new function here. And I've also worked at predominantly B2B tech companies of all sizes. So I've been a marketing team of 1 at a small startup. I've also worked at mid-market size companies, and I currently work for a large enterprise. Again, that's UKG. We're about 14,000 employees strong. So because of all that experience, I'm a bit of a Jill of all trades. So I have experience in a few other marketing disciplines, including events, demand, digital content, etc. And lastly, this is a big one. I'm the co-chair of UKG's Pride Employee Resource Group. So I did want to mention this because this has been incredibly beneficial to my career in helping me build relationships just across the organization. But when I moved into a role focused on services, many of our Pride members were employees and leaders within our services organization. So trust me, when you get handed a new role and are tasked with working with a whole bunch of new stakeholders that you now have to build trust with and build rapport with, it made the biggest difference in my ramp up time to have a number of friendly faces within the services organization. So just a shameless plug for all the ERGs out there, big help to your career, and I definitely encourage folks to join them. Okay, enough about me, let's jump into the topic at hand. So I'm going to start with defining what services marketing is. So first, what do I actually do? And to boil it down, I'm focused on two things. One is articulating the value of our customer experience. So for us at UKG, this is the experience that all of our customers get when they purchase a solution from us. So this is everything from implementation to customer support and success to learning and training, and then also our huge and growing customer community. So this is a big piece of my role, and I'll talk a little bit more about this later, but we are a premium brand at UKG, and because of that, we need to justify our premium pricing. So, and we need to do that with more than product, right? And so by and large, in a lot of mature tech markets, the products themselves can be highly commoditized, right? So marketing your customer experience can make or break your organization, help you stand out. Again, talk a little bit more about that later. And two, also a big part of my role is that I market our value-added services. So these are the services that customers pay for either at sale or post-live. And these services are critically important. They're not super high revenue generators, but they often lead to product expansion opportunities, higher retention rates, and higher CSAT. So all three things that are incredibly valuable to SaaS companies, right? So for me, this means understanding our full portfolio of services, and we have hundreds of SKUs, and positioning our portfolio not only within our broader customer experience story and how that adds unique value, but also articulating how our individual services themselves add value to our customers who decide to purchase them. So that's the scope of what I cover. Let's talk about what I actually do to support our customer experience and our value-added services. So my role is a pretty traditional product marketing role when you think about it. I'm primarily focused on messaging and positioning. That is a big piece of that. Services launches and supporting our go-to-market function, also a big piece. Sales enablement is huge. I'm going to talk a little bit more about the nuances of sales enablement as it relates to services in a little bit. And of course, supporting our content and demand gen priorities by working with those teams to develop a strategy to weave in our customer experience message, as well as our services messaging into those efforts. So again, pretty traditional role in terms of what I'm tasked with, and nothing too surprising there. I did want to call out one thing here, something about what I don't do. It's an important distinction. We have at UKG an amazing customer marketing team here. So I work super closely with this team, but I am not responsible for our customer engagement programs, such as our customer delighters, our customer advocacy programs, our events, stuff like that. So that is not part of my scope. Okay, so that's services marketing in a nutshell. Now I'm going to cover how services marketing is similar to and also different from product marketing. So in terms of what's similar, again, a lot of what I do in terms of responsibilities is quite similar. So again, not going to go through these all again, but messaging and positioning are pretty standard. You have that in your toolbox as a product marketer. You can dust those off and use them in services marketing. Sales enablement, also very similar. Like product marketing, I'm typically brought in as a SME to enable our sales organizations on telling that customer experience messaging, as well as how to talk about our other services. And then our content strategy is also fairly similar. I develop content for all levels of the funnel, just like I would do for products. Okay, that's pretty straightforward. So now let's talk about what's different. First, and this is a bit obvious, but I am not marketing a product. I am marketing the experience and the skills of real people, which I personally find amazing. But it also means that you have to be cautious about how you talk about your colleagues and your people and their experience, because they have a certain way of talking about and thinking about their own skill set. So just a bit of caution there. Be mindful about how you're talking about your colleagues that might sit next to you right down the road. This also means, and this was a tough one for me, that you're not using screenshots. So you have to make sure that you have a lot of great stock pics or videos of people, or take pictures of your own services people or include them in your videos. This one is a little weird for me. I just can't show up and take a screenshot of any software product. I gotta really hunt for those good stock pics of people. Next, sales comp plan. So depending on your organization, your sales team may or may not get quota credit or compensated for selling services. So this becomes a little tough when you think about the mechanics of let's say a demand campaign, right? So you need sales to follow up on leads from the demand campaign, but how many sales reps want to follow up on leads for something that they're not going to get compensated for, right? So I'm not going to spend a ton of time here on this one since it definitely varies by company. But if you ever want to chat with me about this and how you may want to work around this, if this is a barrier at your company, definitely feel free to reach out to me. All right, and enablement. It's not just for sales. And I would argue that this should be more common practice for traditional product marketing roles. But when in services marketing, when you roll out new messaging and positioning and information around your customer experience and services, you also need to enable the services front lines. And those are all the people in customer facing roles in support, success, implementation, et cetera. This is a lot of people. This was not even on my radar when I agreed to take the role. It does increase your scope a fair amount, but it's so important to make sure that the people in the front lines, the people that are interacting with customers on a day-to-day basis or joining sales calls to pitch the customer experience, that they are well aware of what your messaging and what your positioning is. All right. And one big thing here is the dynamics of the services team. So services teams only grow when there is demand versus product, right? We often build in anticipation of growth. Services teams, once there's demand for their services, they'll continue to grow their services practice. So this does put a bit of a reliance on marketing and sales to some extent to help grow the different services practices. Okay, so just something to keep in mind about how the dynamics are different. They're not going to grow in anticipation of growth like product would. And lastly, this is the main reason why I felt compelled to do this talk is that there is very little information on services marketing on Google. And I don't want to brag, but one of my biggest strengths is finding information on Google, and I rely on Google a lot to help inform what I do in my role. So there's very little information on services marketing out there. So I really had to rely on my colleagues and dig in more on understanding customer experience and services strategy from a broader perspective. So there are a bunch of books out there. I'm happy to make a recommendation if you're interested in it. But you have to get a little creative around how you get your information in this role. Okay, so now I usually like to start off with making the business case for services marketing, but I think it makes more sense to define what exactly I'm talking about before jumping right into a business case. So this last piece here is the case for services marketing. Okay, so first off, I know as product marketers, we're always looking for little nuggets and ways to stand out or differentiate in our target markets. And well, by and large, marketing your customer experience is leveraged by very, very few B2B brands. It was quite difficult for me to find companies with any significant messaging or content around their customer experience. So I encourage you to take a look at your industry, your market, to see if your competitors have any messaging or content around their customer experience or the services that they offer. A few companies with decent messaging and content out there are Zendesk and Automation Anywhere. Those are big ones that I took a look at. So props to those companies. You're doing well on that front. But yeah, just purely having a message around your customer experience and your services can help you stand out. Next, this is a big one. If you have a top tier customer experience, you can charge a premium for your product, right? Many people, not all, but are willing to pay more of a premium for a better experience. And we've seen this a ton in consumer purchases for some time. And now we do have research that shows that this is happening in B2B purchases as well. And the important caveat here is that your experience needs to be materially differentiated. So you can't just say you have a great experience and sell at a premium and expect customers to hang around or be happy with their experience when they find out that's not quite the case. And lastly, I made a mention of this before, products are increasingly getting closer and closer in functionality in any given market. And many buyers are more mature. So they've bought the cheaper solution before and they've got burnt, or they've bought something best of breed, but they didn't get the support, the partnership that they needed to get all the value out of their solution. So increasingly, we're seeing more experiential based buyers who understand that the product they're purchasing isn't going to be perfect, but they want to make sure that the vendor they're doing business with is that they're going to help them get the most out of their product that they're buying and make those maybe less than imperfect moments a bit better and a bit smoother for them. That can be done through anything from a comprehensive portfolio of services that they can take advantage of and or a great customer experience. Okay, so I just ran through a lot, so let me take a moment here to wrap up. To review, here's what I covered. I define services marketing as marketing your customer experiences and the services that your organization offers to increase the value of your product. I talked about the differences between marketing products versus marketing services. And the key takeaway there is that the dynamics of services are a bit different than product, but the tools in your bag are pretty similar. And lastly, made the case for services. And the key takeaway there is that it can be a great way to differentiate your solution. Alrighty, hey, so I am always happy to connect with folks. Please reach out via LinkedIn or email if you have questions, feedback, or just want to network. And for those in and around New York City, I'll be there speaking on this topic a bit more in detail at the Product Marketing Summit in March. So I hope to see you all there. And with that, thank you all so much for your time, and I hope you enjoy the rest of Product Marketing Misunderstood.
You are just about halfway through the epic PMA Misunderstood Summit and Kickoff event. I'm Eric Manser, your host for the day and the VP of Product Marketing at Crayon, the #1 solution for competitive intelligence software. By the way, that's not an alternative fact. That's 100% verifiable. Our users voted and ranked us #1 in our space according to G2. Forrester put us ahead of all the other CI software solutions in their most recent wave. And the Product Marketing Alliance themselves have made us the overall leader of the PMA Pulse 2 years running. I have been personally involved with the Product Marketing Alliance for several years now when I was first invited to a private Slack team, chock full of people just like me, product marketers in search of a community where we could share ideas and learn from each other. Being the only product marketer at a company where my boss, himself a former product marketer, had just left, I found myself without a mentor and any real direction. So for those brand new product marketers or those who need a bit of a career roadmap, this session is just for you. Giving you a crash course on product marketing, including everything you need to know as you start your product marketing journey, please welcome Maggie Tharp, Product Marketing Specialist at Form Assembly.
Hi everyone, welcome to my presentation. I hope you're all enjoying the conference so far, and I'm looking forward to sharing some new insights you might not have heard yet, and will hopefully be helpful to people who are new to product marketing or anyone else who's looking to apply a beginner's mindset to their work. This session is called Crash Course to Product Marketing: How to Navigate Major Milestones as a Product Marketer. My name is Maggie Tharp. I'm the product marketing specialist here at FormAssembly, and I'm so glad you chose to join my session today. Just a little bit about me before we get started. I came to marketing by way of journalism, as I'm sure many of you can relate to. Once I was in the marketing world, I gained experience in multiple areas with a heavy emphasis on content. I started working in B2B tech in 2016 when I joined the FormAssembly team. And over my time there, I learned a lot about the product and started exploring how I could put more of a focus on that in my day-to-day job. That's how I moved into the role of product marketing specialist. This was our first ever product marketing role at the company, and currently it's still a department of one. While my previous jobs prepared me for the product marketing role, a lot of my experience was sort of a trial by fire. And I've learned a lot about both the product side of our organization and become a more nuanced marketer because of it. Before we get into the presentation, I want to talk about where I work and what we do in order to give you some background information for the rest of what I'll be sharing today. Essentially, FormAssembly is an easy to use yet powerful all-in-one data collection platform. Our product started primarily as a form builder, but we've recently evolved into a comprehensive data collection platform that lets you build entire workflows containing forms, emails, and other actions. I moved into my new role at the same time our company released the biggest product development in company history, which provided a ton of great learning experiences as a product marketer. So in today's presentation, as you probably guessed from the title, we'll be going through a crash course to product marketing. This is especially helpful for those who are new to the field or in the midst of a major product release. I'm going to share some of the biggest obstacles I encountered and opportunities that I uncovered so you can learn from my own experience. We're going to discuss how to achieve product marketing success in a growing company and how to future-proof your product marketing strategy. To start out, I want to reflect a little bit on the field of product marketing and think about why we're all here and what makes this line of work so unique. When I made the transition to product marketing a year ago, I knew I'd be in for an adventure, but the specialization of product marketing really intrigued me and inspired me to take the plunge. I'm sure a lot of you out there can relate. So product marketing, as you know, it's an evolving and growing field. It might be different at your organization or others, but at FormAssembly, product marketing is the ultimate advocate for customers, marketing, sales, and product teams all at once. It's kind of a junction role between all those different departments. In my experience, it requires in-depth technical product knowledge and intimate familiarity with buyer personas and customer pain points. I've also seen this role can be both complex and fluid by nature, which can be hard to navigate, but not impossible, especially if you like to have a job that's fairly fluid and different from day to day. Like I mentioned before, I went into this product marketing role as a team of one, and one of my first major products on my plate was to coordinate the marketing for the company's largest product release in our history. In a way, it was the ultimate crash course into product marketing. Next, we're going to cover the lessons I learned throughout year one and talk about some of the key elements you'll need to consider as a new product marketer or even an inexperienced product marketer looking to add more value to your team. First off, communication. As a member of a 100% distributed team for nearly 6 years now, I cannot stress the importance of good communication in the workplace. Well, I'd already had plenty of practice interfacing with my own marketing team for years before becoming a product marketer. I then had to establish new processes with other teams to make sure that my product marketing plans were in line with the product plans, and also that they had the biggest impact and reach possible. There's a few things I would recommend to anyone who's stepping into a product marketing role. First, build relationships with every team. Nothing is accomplished alone, and that couldn't be more true than with product releases. If you want to succeed in your role, you need to make it your job to create strong lines of communication between yourself and other key teams. Forming strong relationships with people from product, sales, finance, CS, really any team in your organization makes it so much easier to work together on complex projects. And I'm not talking just about strictly work-related relationships. Building a good, friendly rapport with your coworkers makes your daily responsibilities and interactions that much smoother and more pleasant. Plus, when plans go awry, which they will, you have the mutual understanding and respect to weather any issues together. This second tip is fairly tactical, but if you're like me, you like these tips that you can just take and apply that day at your work. And this tip is to set up weekly meetings. What I've done is to set up a meeting with key stakeholders from multiple teams that deal with product releases. You can hold that meeting weekly or at whatever cadence works for you. And consider the attendees a new sub-team of a sort. I call ours the Junction Team. Every week, you can use that meeting to take time to talk about big updates in your area and ask any questions and throw in a little bit of team building too. And my last tip here is to not forget about sales. Sales enablement is a key part of your job as a product marketer. This is an area I'm still building out my processes in, but two key things I'm doing are the first is coordinating product demos with sales for any new feature releases. It's a great time to show them how the product works so they can talk about it with prospects, and a time that you have their captive attention to review the marketing messaging and plans. And the second tip I got from a CMO school presentation, it was a great idea I got from there, is to put together a message house. And that's essentially a resource that sales, marketing, and any other team can reference for information on a product release. And I'll show you a little bit of what my own message house looks like. So this is a template just to give you an idea of how I put together a message house. I cover what the feature is. I talk about the value proposition, who the target audience is, the problem and solution related to the feature release, and also specific aspects of the product release and the benefits of them. So it's a great way to give anyone in sales or marketing an overview of a new release and help them talk about it in an educated way. All right, the next aspect to think about is deep product knowledge. If you transition to a product marketing role from a less technical marketing role, there's probably going to be a few meetings or many meetings at first where you don't understand half the acronyms, and that's okay. It's a completely different world. At FormAssembly, I had a good level of knowledge already on the product from writing about it as a content writer turned manager for several years. For a long time, part of the reason we didn't have a product marketing role was actually because product marketing was folded into content marketing. Even so, I had a lot to learn about the product when I moved into this role, and two things that have helped me greatly. The first is to ask questions. Remember that beginner mindset I talked about? You're going to need it in this role. I'm not afraid to ask what might be a basic question to make sure that I really understand something. The second is just use the product. You know, whatever your product or service is, use it. For me, that means building forms and workflows and taking advantage of the product training that our company offers. We recently released a certification program to help people both internally and externally become experts in our platform. And it was a really helpful way to brush up on my product knowledge during that first year as a product marketer. So that's one thing I'd highly recommend, is implementing a training or certification program like that for anyone who's involved with product marketing. The third aspect to help you succeed as a product marketer. Well, knowing your product is important. As I mentioned the last slide, knowing your customers might be even more important. Any product marketing strategy is ineffective without deep understanding of the customer's pain points and the value of your product. As a content marketer, like I said, I'd already gained a good foundational understanding of who our customers were and what they wanted. But in a product marketing role, it's been helpful to continually question those assumptions of how well I really know our customers. And having that mindset helps me stay open to new information and insights. And if you know where to look, there's probably a ton of that floating around your own company. A few key areas I want to go over can help you gain more insight into your own customers. Excuse me. First, customer groups. Does your company have a VIP group or customer advisory board? That's the place I would look first. Both of those things can be helpful tools to hear directly from your most engaged customers. I use our own VIP group to both watch conversations unfold organically and also ask specific questions that I have about user needs. And that's an engaged group, so you're more likely to get more thought out, prompt answers from those people. And it helps them feel involved in your company. The second one is review sites. You can find a ton of these. I'm talking about AppExchange if you're in the Salesforce ecosystem, G2, Capterra, many others. These sites have a lot of information about what your customers like and don't like about your service. And you can get a lot of good competitive information by searching what other competitors have on their listings and what their customers are saying about them. And the last tip I'll have in this area to kind of improve your customer knowledge and boost that service mindset is to talk to every team. Since moving into the product marketing role, I've had more cross-departmental collaboration than ever before, from working really closely with the product and knowledge departments to having multiple informational interviews with AEs and CSMs. These people who are on the front lines of your organization and the ones with deep understanding of user needs are really the key to understanding your user and also understanding how the product releases you're putting out are beneficial to them. And also, don't just have these conversations once. You need to continually update your information. So maybe set a quarterly cadence for when you're going to talk to AEs and learn about new use cases. All right, the fourth aspect for success of your product marketing plans is competitor awareness. You may have already realized that product marketing roles tend to vary a lot from organization to organization. In some companies, competitive research and information won't fall under product marketing, but in others, like FormAssembly, it will. It might not be a main focus of your public marketing strategy, but any marketer would tell you that competitive intel is very essential to have when it comes to conversations with customers and prospects. You really want to understand the other companies in your space and how they compare to you. My best tip here is similar to the last slide. Just mine the collective knowledge of your company as much as you can to find good competitive insights. AEs and CS team members likely have a lot of information and much more than you may have right off the bat about how your company stacks up against competitors, because they're having those conversations on a daily basis. I want to talk about a bit of a softer skill now, and that's accountability. As a product marketer, you know, whether you like it or not, you're the glue that holds multiple teams together. And one of the biggest roles is to hold accountability, not just for yourself, but for the teams you work with daily and also the projects you're working on. We're each team's gateway to the other, and it's our job to make sure that everyone holds their commitments and remains transparent about what's going on. Since this is really crucial when a product team is developing a new solution, everyone, you know, multiple teams have to remain aligned in order for sales and marketing to promote and sell a new feature or new solution effectively. I will say that sometimes being a product marketer can feel like being a project manager, but if you embrace that fact, you can bring a lot of value to your company. Whenever I can, I try to fill that role of coordinator and communication link between teams like product marketing and sales, mostly because it's necessary. And as a product marketer, you're better positioned to play that cross-departmental role. Because remembering to make those links, scheduling meetings, making sure important tasks are completed is a job in itself. I rely heavily on predefined processes, doc templates, and project management tools to make sure no one else has to remind me to do my job and to keep myself from dropping the ball. So if you don't have those things in place, I would really recommend getting a project management tool, really learning how to use it inside and out, and creating some reusable templates for the things you need to do regularly, like go-to-market strategies. Next, I want to talk about flexibility. We've brought this up a few times, but in product marketing and in many other jobs too, but a lot in product marketing, change is really the only constant, and being flexible is just crucial. You have to be ready to pivot at a moment's notice, whether something's changing with a product, there's a new aspect you didn't hear about, the timeline's changing. So you need to be ready to pivot at a moment's notice and always be learning. This might sound like a bit of a cliche, but it is true when it comes to product marketing. Unforeseen circumstances can cause your projects to be delayed, which means your marketing plans need to be just as flexible. This is also where that relationship building comes in. If you've already done the work to form connections with the key people on your team, you will be the first one they reach out to when plans need to change. And that means you're never going to get left out of the loop on important product developments. All right, that about wraps up my presentation for the day. I hope this information is helpful and thought-provoking to any of you who are kicking off new milestones in your product marketing career, or if you're just looking to bring a fresh perspective to your work. I'll now open up the floor for questions or any additional tips and insight from all of you.
Are you wondering how to align the product marketing function at your organization? Do your internal teams have little or no understanding of what product marketing is and the benefits you bring to the fore? Are you sick of being misunderstood? Product Marketing Alliance's brand new book, Misunderstood, features first-hand knowledge, techniques, and case studies to help you demystify product marketing, elevate the function, and gain the recognition you and your fellow PMMs deserve. Learn how to effectively communicate the value you bring to key processes such as positioning, personas, segmentation, OKRs, and gain supplementary intel from the likes of Privy, G2, Hotjar, Intercom, Zendesk, Adobe, and Drift. Misunderstood is packed with takeaways that will propel the value of your role and the overall importance of the PMM function and isn't to be missed. Get your copy at pmmalliance.co/misunderstood.
Hello and welcome back to Product Marketing Misunderstood, presented by the Product Marketing Alliance. I'm Eric Manser, VP of Product Marketing at Crayon, and your host for today's proceedings. I'm excited to bring on this next presenter, who's going to be talking about a topic that I'm extremely passionate about, the intersection between product management and product marketing management. But first, a little housekeeping. Misunderstood is not only a one-day summit-style event that's packed with exciting speakers and thrilling presentations, it's also a launch event for an exciting new project from the PMA, their very own book. Misunderstood the book will be released in hardcover and in ebook formats on April 18th. After our next presenter, we're going to be taking a small break. Lunch for those of you on the East Coast of North America, happy hour if you're in Europe, but we'll resume our regularly scheduled live streaming at 1 p.m. EST and 6 p.m. GMT. And if you missed any of our early morning sessions, head over to productmarketingalliance.com and sign up to become a member. You'll be able to see any session on demand not long after the event has ended. Now let's get back to some great content. She is the Senior Product Marketing Manager for Ansys and someone who knows how to navigate the often dark and narrow pathways between two departments that are very closely linked. With her presentation, the Dream Team, Product Manager and Product Marketing Manager, please welcome Priyanka Gotika.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. For everyone joining this session, my name is Priyanka. I'm a Senior Product Marketing Manager at Ansys, and today I'm going to talk about the Dream Team, Product Management and Product Marketing, how the two people can work together to get things done. And while you are, silently laughing or laughing out loud at the meme here, I'd like to do a quick introduction about my background to, show that I can talk about this topic, right? So over the last 10 years, I started off as a technical support engineer, moved into a more product marketing and then into a more product management roles, and now back to product marketing. And I have been on the both sides of the coin, and sometimes I had to lean into one versus the other role in order to get things done. So I've developed some best practices that I thought you could, learn from my experience. Without further ado, let's look at what the agenda is. So I wanted to give you a window into the life of a product manager, how their day, what their day entails, and what they do for product in their product management role. And then challenge you to think in terms of competencies versus responsibilities. When it gets into the question of who owns what and who supports what, how do we get to come to an understanding and get things done? And finally, 3 ideas to get started. There might be more, there might be other things that you can explore, but this is what I came up with in my personal experiences being on both sides of the equation. So where do we fit in the product organization, right? At a very high level, a PM sits closer to the engineering or the R&D side, whereas a PMM sits closer to sales and the customer side of things. And sometimes there could be customer success and other customer-facing teams that a PMM is working with as well. But yes, you can see the product manager's role kind of extends to the customer, and the product marketing role does too. And there is a gray area where PM and PMM roles are overlapping with each other. So this is where most of the confusion comes into the picture, right? Just as a simple example, a product manager needs to discover what product that needs to be built by engineering. In order to discover that, they are talking with the customer regularly to understand the customer pain points, do the product discovery, figure out what needs to be built by engineering, and then involve a product marketer to then take this built product to market. Similarly, in an ideal world, a product marketer is also talking with customers in order to perform market research, in order to understand their pain points, in order to be able to message the products well and position them well in the market that they're going to launch this product or release this new capability in. If you are not aligned, or if there is a lot of the disconnect, then both of these roles are talking with customer in different points of time, and they end up frustrating customer. They end up getting different pieces of information. They ended up building something else and launching something else, right? So there is a lot of these issues that might happen, and that's when the question of, okay, who exactly owns messaging? Okay, who exactly owns the go-to-market? Those types of questions come into our individual lives as product marketers and product managers. It's a bit of like a telephone game that we used to play as kids, right? Like where there are many people, a phrase is said to the first person in their, whispered in their ears, and they need to then tell the same phrase, and the last person would blurt out the phrase, and it's never, ever the original phrase. It's always something else that comes out at the other. And that's what happens when, there are so many touch points throughout the organization. But before diving into how to solve these issues, I would like to talk about the life of a product manager, right? At a very high level, they're again always thinking about the future state of the product. Where do we want the product to be at the 3 to 5 year level? And in order to achieve that goal, what is the strategy that they need to take in the next 1 year, right? Like slightly shorter term. And then getting more granular at the roadmap level, they think in terms of quarterly roadmaps. What are the different milestones in order to get to that quarterly target? And then bi-weekly sprints, which are way more tactical in nature, that specific features and specific capabilities are fixed and finalized, shipped, built, and launched. More often than not, product marketers are involved in these bi-weekly sprints where something is ready to be launched, it needs to be going to market, and a marketer's help comes into picture. But I would say that a product marketer needs to be involved in all of these different stages. And some of the best ways to get involved is really to have an open conversation, ask a lot of questions, be curious about the products that you're marketing. Ask what is the vision, where are we going with this, what is the big picture, and be able to distill that down to what you're marketing today, what you're launching today. So that's at a very high level, the life of a product manager, right? And you don't see the word marketing anywhere here. They're not doing any marketing. So if anybody asks whether you do product management or ask them whether they do product marketing, that is just the misunderstanding of the roles per se. But at a very high level, this is what a product manager does. Now, here are some typical PM/PMM conversations, which is where a lot of the misunderstanding happens, right? A PM could be working on a PowerPoint deck. They're just handed off to you, asking you to work your PowerPoint magic on the deck, right? And your internal voice goes like, I'm not a PowerPoint monkey, right? Like I want to be involved in the strategy and the messaging and be able to digest some of the decisions, just, if product priorities changed in the last minute, what caused that, and things like that. So that is what we want to try and minimize. I'm going to say, be very honest, that this is not going to be end all be all, but we can minimize such conversations. We can minimize the internal voice eating you up internally, right? So the way to think about this is to move away from the traditional responsibilities model, where we kind of have these set, like, product marketing owns messaging, product management owns roadmap, product marketing owns go-to-market, product management owns strategy. Instead of saying this specific black and white areas of I own this and you own that, again, the color coding here is just things that I'm usually responsible for. And the yellows are things that I'm also responsible for, but I'm not, 100% fully owning it. I'm owning it in partnership with someone else, like a product manager or marketing, for example. I'd like to challenge you to think about in terms of competencies. Now, some of these terms could be repetitive. Some of these terms could be exactly the same, like competitive analysis, for example. But these are skills that can be learned over time with experience with different projects. Things like customer interviews, for example, which both the product manager needs to do, both the product marketing manager needs to do. Things like win-loss interviews that product marketing managers usually do. Things like user research, product manager does. But perhaps both of you are not good at the skill, or one of you is better at the skill than the other. So I would challenge you to go back to your desk when you and have a passionate conversation with your product manager to distill down the key competencies that you need, both of you together, in order to get things done. And I listed some of these things over here, but there could be more, right? And again, the greens are things that I think I'm really good at. So when I go back to my product manager, show this, they might be good at some other things like project organization, user retention, sales training, those types of things. And perhaps that's where we start to get better at other things and start to give ownership to them in areas that you are not as strong as the other person. Here's a really good breakdown by Product Marketing Alliance. And the focus is really on the middle part, which is an intersection between the two, right? Like here is where I would challenge you to think about the competency model. For example, if you take pricing, the competency here is financial analysis or any kind of data analysis for that matter. So data analysis becomes a box inside the competency model, and you'll have to know, I as a product marketer, am I competent enough in this skill to take it and run with it? And another way of thinking about it is to whether you should develop that skill. That comes, definitely comes in later. But in order to build that trust and get the relationship going, you need to be okay to hand off pricing, data analysis aspect to your product manager if you think you do not have enough experience in that area to build the trust again. So here are the 3 strategies in order to have those conversations, in order to take ownership or partnership, or I didn't really have another word that ends with ship, so I came up with this seeking other ships, but I'll talk about that in a little bit. Some strategies to build that trust and get that relationship going, taking it to the next level. Right. So starting with partnership. It's really a handshake and not a handoff. That's how I would like you to think about it. And in order for it to be an iterative process, you need to build trust with your counterpart. And there's no shortcut to this. This is not going to be easy, but you'll have to have that conversation, sit down with them, figure out where we are good, where our strengths lie, where our areas of improvement lie, and start to operate from strengths, and then peer mentor each other to get better in areas to improve. I'm pretty sure there are a lot of things that they're really good at, that they can teach you as well in this partnership. And the second aspect is ownership. And this is all about being proactive and picking an area to own. For example, pricing. Let's say pricing is an area that you really want to own. So that has a list of competencies that you need to have, right? Like data analysis, like we discussed. If that is the area that you want to go deep, that is something you need to be proactive with your product manager and let them understand that this is the area that you want to develop competency in. And again, you need to have a breadth of experience and knowledge as a product marketer, but you need to be known for one thing and be that go-to person for that one thing by your product manager, so they can rely on you to get that things done. And for all other things that come your way, learn to say no. I know it is easier said than done, but those one-off random acts of marketing that you're asked to perform, it's best to stay away from that or minimize that to minimum level and continue to move in the path of your self-evolution as a product marketer. And the last piece, sinking other ships, I said I'll elaborate on this a little bit. This is all about tackling competition. I wrote this down because I was thinking about what is a good project where you can, levels that come to the same terms. And competitive analysis seems like one area that both product management and product marketing needs to, really be on top of. for them, it is from a product feature perspective, but for us, for product marketers, it's more from, messaging and market positioning point of view. So having that common enemy and having that, aligned OKRs in one project really will help you to build that relationship. And as you're working on this one project together, I'm pretty sure you'll run into conflicts. That is just natural. And my advice, negotiation 101, to separate out the people from the problem and focus on the competition, focus on the project that is in front of us. Again, I know it is easier said than done, but if you are inspired to take your relationship with your product manager to the next level, this is where I would start competitive analysis. So to summarize my talk today, have a little empathy towards your PM. We don't know how their day is going and why they're asking you to. And then go into the more competency model thinking, have that open conversation, identify your own individual competencies and operate from there. And as I mentioned towards the end, ownership and partnership where appropriate. Take the things that you want to really hone in and build ownership in that area. It's a lot of hard work, but that's what you want to do. That's what you want to do. And partner with them in areas that you think you can leverage their expertise. So with that, I will close my talk. Thank you for listening. This QR code leads to my LinkedIn profile. So if you want to connect with me, keep the conversation going, or have other questions, do reach out to me, and I'll be more than happy to connect with you. Thank you.